So, the world is still bonkers then, it would seem.
Yes, it would seem, and this is not the first this week that's happened in Oxford Union.
Really?
We had Professor Selina Todd just a few days ago, a feminist, an expert on working class women. She was deplatformed too for her views on the transgender debate.
Right.
Apparently she was a transphobe. So this is the second in just a week that feminists at Oxford University have chosen to deplatform women in this way. And it's sort of, you have to be the sort of right woman for these kind of, for this minority, this minority of students who can't seem to accept diversity of opinion.
Yeah, and presumably you can be the right kind of woman by not even being a woman, can you?
Well, exactly. It's also quite ironic, really. I mean, as Amber tweeted herself, this was an event that was meant to encourage young women into politics. But what did it prove? That you're not allowed to think outside the box, or you risk being deplatformed, risk being cancelled.
I mean, I assume you've been in higher education much more recently than I have. What was it like when you were in it? Was it as bad as this?
Do you know what? I don't think it was as bad. I think it's definitely accelerated in recent years. I think that there's always been a sort of left-wing bias, but I think the tutors and the professors are also sort of working as social activists, political activists, rather than teachers. And, Policy Exchange, one of the other think tanks, did a report recently, and it found that, nearly half of students think that, ensuring the dignity of minorities is more important than free expression. They endorse safe spaces. They favour sort of trigger warnings. And also, want outright bans on people from UKIP or other parties that they don't approve of even attending university. And if we look back, it's not just conservatives who are being deplatformed. You also have, the case of Germaine Greer. You had Peter Hitchens, whose invitation to speak at Portsmouth University was rescinded. You have Jacob Rees-Mogg as well. My alma mater, Bristol Uni, backed proposals to ban all TERF speakers, so that's trans exclusionary radical feminists, from campus altogether. And these are people who are just, concerned over the sort of self-identification issue, which I think is fair enough. So it's all gone a bit mad, I think.
And it has. Well, even just that phrase or that description, TERF, is not something that I don't remember hearing that before last year, really.
No, I don't remember that at all. I mean, for me, what I experienced at university was more a sort of overall left-wing bias in seminars, studying Marxism over free markets, that sort of thing. But it seems to be that now you have a sort of minority of students who are really, running the roost and dictating what the rest of the student body should be able to listen to. And I think, they talk about privilege and they talk in their statement about how they have privilege and they need to bear in mind the views of ethnic minorities and other non-binary people and things. But do they not realise that they have so much privilege just being there at Oxford University, having the opportunity to listen to a former Home Secretary? This is a privilege and they're just throwing it away.
Exactly right. And the Free Speech Union, Toby Young's new outfit, has put out a tweet that said, last month, Gavin Williamson gave UK universities a final warning. If they didn't take action to uphold free speech, the government would. And it then goes on to say that this is clearly a breach of Oxford Union's own policy on free speech, as drafted by Timothy Garton-Ash and Ken MacDonald, as well as the EHRC's guidance on free speech at universities. So, I mean, there is probably a way of making them stop doing this, isn't there?
I think definitely the government should be encouraging this freedom of expression to be upheld in universities. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. I was heartened when I saw in the Conservative manifesto that they did mention the importance of free speech on campus, because I think it's just not fair to students. Students should be able to challenge ideas, and I think there is a lack of that. I mean, I recently took part in a panel at Essex University, and it was fantastic because I was the only sort of non-left-wing person on the panel of 4, but it was good that there was that diversity of opinion represented. But they told me that nearly all of their previous panels, they'd all been in violent agreement. And so they'd all been left-wing, and this is just not good for discussion. And also, looking to the future, how does this bode for the future? I mean, these are the future civil servants, academics, lawyers. If they can't even handle a talk by Ambur Rudd, we've got real problems ahead, We shouldn't be indulging this groupthink.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, how did you find being on that panel? Because, I mean, I've been in places as well where clearly they've never actually listened to anybody else with a different opinion. And they're sort of looking at you like you're from another planet.
I know, it's so funny. And the thing is that we're so used to hearing their arguments.
Yeah.
We hear them every day. It's sort of rammed down your throat, the sort of left-wing arguments. And then when they meet you, you're sort of like a specimen in the zoo. It's quite funny. They're sort of asking you questions like they've never heard the case made for capitalism or the case made for whatever issue it is. It's quite extraordinary, really.
It really is.
I think that professors need to, it doesn't matter what political views professors have, but they should be being far more objective. If you look at professors now, they're all over social media, and that's their freedom to do so, but they're pushing their own very narrow left-wing views quite a lot, and I think that it's damaging to that rapport between students, because not all students are left-wing, and not all students buy into this anti-free speech agenda.
No, but if you are one of those students who's not very comfortable with this new kind of radical feminism and this new lefty approach to absolutely everything, including, I'm presuming, at Cambridge, the sort of encouragement of Extinction Rebellion to dig up the lawn and to go and deposit it in a bank in town, it's almost a kind of secondary form of society that's been created, because what we've been told over the whole course of the last week or so with Priti Patel and the civil service is that a lot of these people end up in the civil service, and so they've kind of moved seamlessly from school through higher education into public sector work, and they've never had to change their view on anything.
Well, that's the thing. And also, I've worked in the private sector as well, and it's very much there as well. There's a sort of groupthink over things like the gender pay gap, racial pay gaps, also around things like the diversity agenda. And there's no room for difference of opinion, really, because why would you bother sticking your hand up if people are then going to sort of shout you down or be shocked by your views? And the problem is that people then end up self-censoring. And I think that's what a lot of students who aren't confident enough to sort of speak out, or who just can't be bothered to speak out, what they do is they just keep quiet and they just self-censor and they just go on. But I think this sort of tyranny of minority is really bad, and I think it's really awful for our academic.
Yeah. And also, given that it's the in word to use at the moment, it's kind of a bullying way of running a university, isn't it?
I think it is. I think that universities really, really need to make more of an effort to allow diversity of opinion and to encourage it. I think that professors should be open to hearing different views and actively encourage it. I think that's what universities should be about. And I think obviously this is coming from the student union, this is coming from the students themselves, and I think they need to be challenged by, we need to encourage students themselves to challenge these narratives, but also encourage professors to make sure that they stand up for free speech and don't allow these deplatformings to happen. And this happened, within an hour of the event?
Yeah, well, it was half an hour before it was due to start.
On a human level, how rude is that?
Well, exactly. Ambur Rudd's own daughter, who's using slightly more industrial language than her mother, basically said it was incredibly rude because she'd agreed to go and do this thing free of charge. She'd travelled all the way to Oxford. Now, you and I both know we're asked to do things like this all the time, and it's a pain in the neck if you have to go out of town to do it and to not even be paid for it. Doing them a massive favour, and they basically just say thanks but no thanks.
I know, it's pretty outrageous. But going back to the sort of wider free speech on campus point, we had it during the Brexit debate. Students who were pro-Brexit were very much silenced. And what happens is that they end up sort of forming their own little niche groups outside of the mainstream of the university, joining the free speech unions where they feel able to speak freely. But they should feel free to speak freely, whether they're in a seminar, whether they're in a lecture, whether they're in a student society meeting. We really need to open up the debate.
Yes, I think so. And it is International Women's Day on Sunday. Somebody asked me today, how do you feel about that? I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with an International Women's Day. I think it should be celebrated, but, it shouldn't be hijacked either by these nutters.
No, exactly. There's so many conversations to be had about women's rights around the world, still in this country. But again, as you say, it is often hijacked by people who deem themselves to be progressive, but in the end, they are actually the ones with the regressive views. They are the fascists in their own words. They're the ones who want to restrict speech and want to deem what a woman should be and what they shouldn't be. And I think that International Women's Day should be a time to celebrate women of all backgrounds, women with all different views, conservative women, left-wing women, women with no views at all on politics. This should be a positive movement, and also shouldn't demonize men.
Yeah, and I think also women should not be oppressing other women. You know, it doesn't seem to be the reason why feminism was invented.
No, I think there are lots of narratives around victimhood going around, and I think that we should be, it sounds cliche, but sort of lifting each other up and being each other's supporters and working with men and being friends with men and being comfortable around each other and moving forward in that respect, and not demonising women who, for example, have concerns about the transgender debate, and working together to have a more constructive way of talking to each other, I think.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Emily. Thanks very much indeed.